What if the reason so many things never quite added up wasn't confusion or ignorance, but omission? What if one verified fact quietly exposes that the story we were told for years was incomplete, polished, and carefully simplified? This isn't about one lie. It's about a pattern that only became visible once data, technology, and artificial intelligence started connecting dots humans never could on their own. In today's video, we're uncovering the fact that forces us to rethink what we trusted, why the truth stayed hidden for so long, and how awareness finally broke through the noise. Stay with me till the end, because once this clicks, you'll realize the issue was never what you believed. It was what you were never shown. Before we continue, like this video and subscribe to FactVex. What's coming next explains how one overlooked truth exposed years of selective storytelling, and the final points reveal why this realization changes how you interpret everything moving forward. The fact that didn't match the official story. For years, the official story sounded reasonable because nothing directly contradicted it, until one verified fact refused to fit. The data was accurate, publicly sourced, and independently confirmed, yet it pointed in a direction the narrative never addressed. Artificial intelligence later revealed this contradiction clearly by comparing long-term datasets that humans usually examine separately. The issue wasn't false information, it was selective presentation. When facts were shown in isolation, everything appeared consistent. When viewed together, the explanation collapsed. That's when people began to realize they weren't lied to outright. They were guided. This single mismatch mattered because it exposed how easily truth can feel complete while still being incomplete. Once noticed, it was impossible to unsee, and trust quietly began to shift. Why this truth stayed invisible for so long? The truth didn't stay hidden because it was protected. It stayed invisible because it felt familiar. Human brains stop questioning patterns that repeat without immediate consequences. Artificial intelligence showed how repetition normalizes partial explanations over time, turning them into accepted reality. Institutions benefited from this without actively manipulating anything. As long as outcomes seemed stable, no one felt urgency to look deeper. Silence did the work. The terrifying part is how effective this method is. No censorship, no denial, just omission wrapped in routine. Over years, missing context stops feeling missing. That's how this truth survived unnoticed, not through secrecy, but through comfort. Familiarity dulled curiosity, and curiosity is the only thing that threatens incomplete narratives. How artificial intelligence connected the missing pieces. Artificial intelligence didn't uncover motive, it uncovered structure. By analyzing massive data sets side by side, it connected information humans never thought to compare. Patterns emerged that couldn't be explained away as coincidence. Artificial intelligence showed that decisions, outcomes, and timelines align too neatly across different systems. That's where the illusion broke. What looked reasonable when viewed alone became suspicious when combined. The realization wasn't emotional, it was mathematical. Once the correlations appeared, denial felt pointless. This wasn't speculation or opinion, it was pattern recognition at scale. Artificial intelligence didn't accuse anyone of lying. It revealed that the full picture had never been assembled publicly. And once assembled, the story changed permanently. The moment public trust began to crack. Public trust didn't shatter overnight. It softened, then thinned. Artificial intelligence sentiment analysis showed a gradual shift from agreement to hesitation. People stopped defending explanations and started pausing before accepting them. That pause mattered more than outrage. The fact didn't make people angry, it made them cautious. Caution spreads quietly. Once people sense something is missing, even accurate statements feel rehearsed. Trust becomes conditional instead of automatic. This moment marked the transition from belief to verification. Authority wasn't rejected, it was reevaluated. That's a subtle but permanent change. Once trust requires proof instead of reassurance, the relationship between institutions and the public never fully returns to what it was before. Why authorities never fully corrected the record. Correcting the narrative required admitting that earlier explanations were incomplete. Artificial intelligence modeling showed that doing so would destabilize confidence across multiple systems at once. From an institutional perspective, continuity felt safer than transparency. Admitting omission reshapes trust unpredictably. Silence became the least disruptive option. This wasn't about defending a lie, it was about protecting coherence. Authorities relied on the assumption that partial clarity was better than destabilizing truth. The problem is that coherence without completeness decays over time. Once awareness spreads, silence begins to feel intentional. That's when credibility erodes fastest. By choosing not to address the gap, institutions unintentionally confirm that something important had been missing all along. The psychological impact on ordinary people. When people internalized this realization, panic didn't follow, reflection did. Artificial intelligence showed rising uncertainty rather than fear. People quietly reassessed beliefs they'd held with confidence. That internal shift mattered more than public debate. Discovering you weren't told the full story doesn't cause rage, it causes reevaluation. People began questioning how they decide what deserves trust. This fact didn't rewrite reality, it reframed it, and reframing is uncomfortable. Familiar narratives suddenly felt shallow, not wrong, just incomplete. That discomfort lingers. Once someone experiences that shift, blind acceptance becomes psychologically impossible to restore. The mind remembers what it felt like to see the missing piece. Why this wasn't a single lie, but a systemic one. This fact proved the issue wasn't one misleading claim, it was a repeated pattern. Artificial intelligence exposed consistent omission across time, industries, and explanations. Certain types of information were routinely minimized because they complicated messaging. Simplicity became operational strategy. Over time, complexity disappeared from public understanding. This wasn't evil, it was efficient. Systems simplify to function smoothly, but simplification, when repeated, becomes distortion. Once people recognized the pattern, the focus shifted. It was no longer about who lied. It was about why reality kept being trimmed down before reaching the public. Understanding that systemic habit was more unsettling than uncovering a single false statement. How media helped maintain the illusion. Media didn't invent the omission, it reinforced it. Artificial intelligence analysis showed that familiar narratives received consistent coverage, while contradictory details lacked repetition. This wasn't censorship, it was inertia. Media ecosystems reward clarity, not complexity. Stories that challenge existing explanations are harder to sustain. As a result, the fact remained technically accessible but practically invisible. That's how omission survives. Not through suppression, but through neglect. Once audiences noticed this pattern, trust didn't collapse. But consumption changed. Viewers became more analytical, noticing what wasn't said as much as what was. Headlines lost authority, patterns gained it. Why? This changes how we define truth. This realization shifted the definition of truth itself. Accuracy alone was no longer enough. Artificial intelligence revealed how correct facts can still mislead when context is missing. People began judging truth by completeness instead of precision. That changed skepticism permanently. Verifying sources was no longer sufficient. Viewers wanted scope, transparency, and acknowledgement of uncertainty. Trust moved away from authority and toward openness. Once that standard changed, it never reverted. Truth became something dynamic instead of declared. That shift didn't create distrust. It created higher expectations. And those expectations reshaped how information is evaluated across every field. The long-term consequences, already in motion, even after attention faded, consequences didn't. Artificial intelligence systems updated assumptions quietly, policies adjusted subtly, planning models shifted behind closed doors. No announcements were made, yet outcomes changed. That's how foundational truths operate. They don't stay visible. They embed themselves into decision-making. The lie didn't collapse dramatically. It dissolved gradually as awareness increased. Years from now, people may not remember this fact specifically, but they'll live inside the changes it triggered. That's the most powerful kind of impact, when reality adjusts without needing permission or acknowledgement. Once that happens, reversal isn't possible. What this realization was inevitable. This exposure wasn't caused by whistleblowers or leaks. Artificial intelligence made fragmentation impossible to maintain. As data expanded, omissions became mathematically visible. Systems designed for slower information couldn't adapt fast enough. Inevitability doesn't require intent. It requires scale. Eventually, disconnected pieces assemble themselves. That's what happened here. The system didn't collapse. It revealed its limits. Once complexity crossed a threshold, selective truth stopped working. What emerged wasn't scandal, it was recognition. And recognition, once reached, doesn't reverse. It only spreads quietly. What this means going forward. The lesson here isn't paranoia, it's adaptability. This fact doesn't mean everything you were told was false. It means selective truth is more common than outright lies. Artificial intelligence models constantly update when new data appears. Humans must learn the same habit. Certainty is no longer a strength, flexibility is. Once you accept that explanations can be incomplete, you become harder to mislead and easier to inform. That's not distrust, it's maturity. Awareness doesn't destroy belief, it refines it. And refinement is how understanding survives in a world driven by complexity. If this video made you pause, that's exactly the point. The most dangerous lies aren't spoken, they're implied through what's missing. At FactVex, we don't aim to shock, we aim to reveal patterns that help you think more clearly. Thanks for staying with me until the end. Stay curious, stay alert, and remember, once you see how omission works, you'll never consume information the same way again.